Hi, this is Jerry Hubbell. I'm the Director of Electrical Engineering for Explore Scientific. And today's video is about how to set up and use the ExploreStars application that comes with your PMC-Eight system, whether you bought it with the G11 or with the Exos 2. So the first thing I want to show you is the ExploreStars.com website. It's available, and it shows it's got several links on it to talk about the PMC-Eight. Manuals and downloads and stuff like that, and then you can go there and look at all those items. And then, so first of all, when we go to set up the ExploreStars app, I'm assuming that you've already got it installed for this video, and when you're going to go connect it, is the first thing you want to power up your PMC-Eight. Make sure it's connected to your mount through the motor cables. And make sure that it's on and the Wi-Fi is on, so that when you go to the network settings on your desktop, you can find it just like here, PMC-8-49. That's the SSID I have, so you'll have a similar SSID that's going to have a different number probably. And it may prompt you for the password if you haven't connected to it before, and the password is just simply PMC-8 as it's shown here, without the dash and the number. So you want to click on that to connect to it, and that's where it will prompt you for the password if it needs one. But if you've already signed in before, it won't do that. And you can see it's connected right there. All right, so then we're going to start up the ExploreStars application, and if you just installed it, it might be at the top, or you can go down, scroll down to the E and start it that way. And it should connect right up to the application, to the PMC-Eight box. So we'll see, it's loading the database now, and that's started up. So you'll get that compass rose type display. So the first thing you're going to do when you first start it is set the preferences to your mount and to your location. So you'll go to settings and then preferences, and I'll go through this. Let's focus first on the items that are due to your location and your mount. So the first thing you're going to look at is down here where it says scope type, and since we have an Exos 2, we're going to select scope type of Exos 2, and that will set the RA and deck steps and the direction, and also calculate the tracking speed for the Exos 2. The next thing you're going to do is set the latitude and longitude. There's a couple ways to do that. One is to use the GPS. The other way is to manually enter it. So if you manually enter it, you'll highlight, it'll be 0 there probably for you, and then the first time, and then you'll go ahead and enter your coordinates. So mine is for latitude 38.3375, and then my longitude is minus 77.7694. One other thing that you really need to set, and you really need to pay attention, is your clock. If your clock needs to be well within 1 minute, it should actually be to the second. So if you've got a cell phone that's got an accurate time on it, or some other source of accurate time, you should go ahead and set your time to that and make sure it's accurate. Believe it or not, 1 minute off, so say you just set it to the closest minute, is equal to 1/4 of a degree in pointing error. So it's important that you set your clock accordingly. So the next thing we're going to do is, let's look at the other preferences. So once you've got the latitude and longitude set, it'll show up here in the site data, and the time will be correct. And then it will calculate local mean sidereal time, LMST. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other settings that we have. You can set to use a GPS. Right now it's off from mine. night mode is set on. Let's go ahead and turn it off and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to turn night mode off, and the way you refresh the display is you get out of here, you click on the black area, and then you can bring the app bar up and hit home, and then it will update the display to show you that you're in day mode now and not night mode. So let's go ahead and look at that and change it back. So night mode is off. Let's go back on, and then there's a couple other things we can do. I talked about RA direction, deck direction a little bit when it automatically sets that when you select your mount. But if you're in, this is for the default, is for the northern hemisphere. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, what you're going to do, you're going to set it to the opposite state that your default was set to. So in this case, Exos 2, if I'm in the southern hemisphere, I'll set both of these on. So there's a couple other displays that you can bring up. That's for more advanced troubleshooting and things like that. One is the debug data display, and the other is the show alignment data display, and we'll get into that later. But just to show you what they look like, I'll get out of here, bring up the app bar, and hit home. You can see it went back to night mode, but it also displays debug data and alignment data. We'll get into the alignment data later. So finally, let's go ahead and we'll set those off for right now. Debug data, alignment data. We'll go back to home page and it'll take those away. Alright, so now that we've got our system preferences set, we should be able to use the mount. And there's two ways to use it. You can manually slew it and search for objects by entering coordinates, or you can do it the easy way, which is what we set up for to look up the databases of different objects. We've got different data sets, one for the alignment stars, one for Messier objects, and one for solar system objects. And then you can also search for other more extensive objects that we've got loaded in the database. The database has over 70,000 objects in it in the database. So let's start out with the Messier objects. So when you click that button, the M button, Messier objects, it brings up this display, which is a graphical image display of all the objects. So you can go ahead and select the one you want to observe. So let's go to M57. And what it shows you is a picture of the object. It's got some information about it, where it's located right now in the sky, and then some information about the ring nebula in this example. It's got some objects have more, some objects have less information about them. One thing is, I'll show you, M31. We'll go to M31, but notice it's got this button now. That means it's at the local time in your location, it's up above the horizon right now. So you could actually slew to that object and look at it. And it also has information about the object. So keep in mind, if this button does not show up, then you're not going to be able to slew to it because it's not above your local horizon. Let's go back to home, and we can look at the solar system objects that are available. There's just a handful. It's got all the major planets, and it's got Pluto and the Sun over here, grouped over here, and then with the rest of the minor planets that are in the list. These are the largest minor planets that are available to look at in the solar system objects. That doesn't mean you can't look at other objects, you just have to know the coordinates for those objects. And we'll get into that later. Alright, so when you've connected to the mount, the first thing you want to do is, assuming you're out in the field and you've got it close to polar aligned, you want to do an all sky alignment or a 2 and 3 star alignment. So, alright, so once you've selected the, once you've moved it around a little bit, make sure it works, you go back to park position and do that by hitting park here. And then you're ready to align. So what you want to do is bring up the app bar and hit 2 or 3 star alignment. I suggest the 3 star alignment. And then you're going to go ahead and select a star. So it gives you a choice of the first star, and if it's okay, you're going to go ahead and hit align to this star. If you want to go to another star, you'll try the next star. So we'll go ahead and align to this star. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look in the eyepiece and manually move the scope using either the keypad or the virtual joystick to adjust the mount to center the star in the eyepiece. So we gotta wait till it gets to the star and then we're ready to move the scope. So select the slow speed. If you're going to do it with the keypad, select slow speed like number 2. 0 is the slowest, 9 is the fastest, and then you can move it up and to the right or left or down to center the star. So once you've done that and the star is centered, then you'll hit the sync button and it'll come up and ask you for the next star, and we'll go ahead and try the next one. And we'll go ahead and use this one, Mizar. So then it'll go and slew to Mizar, where it thinks Mizar is. And depending on how well you physically aligned your mount, it will be closer or farther away from the star. And it helps you by identifying the star in the graphic, so you can see this flashing circle that shows where Mizar is. So once you've selected Mizar, it's going to slew to the object, slew to Mizar, where it thinks it is. And then again, you're going to look up through your finder or through your eyepiece, and then you're going to center the star. So this time, I'm going to move it a little bit with the virtual joystick by basically pointing your mouse at the joystick, which is the circle 0, and dragging it a little bit that way and a little bit that way until it centers, and that, for me, that's centered. So let's go ahead and sync to that, and then it'll give us one more star. We've already done, yeah, let's use Almach and Andromeda, so we'll align to that star. So we've got to wait for it to slew to that star. And it'll take a while. It's got to do a pure flip. That's why it's taking a while to get to that star. And you want to align to stars that are on either side of the meridian. That way it'll give you a good overall calibration of the sky. So once it gets there, which is just about there now, then we can go ahead and move the mount and position the star in the eyepiece. You can use your finder to find it, or you can use your eyepiece if it's close to your eye, in your center of your eyepiece. You move it around, and then once you've done it, you can hit sync, and that'll be it. Now, one thing you can do to look at is look at the alignment data. You can turn that on, like we showed before, show alignment data, so you can turn it on, and then hit refresh it and hit home, and then you'll see the alignment data here. Now, one thing to note is if you're very close to polar aligned, you're going to get data that looks like this in the alignment data. The first number will be close to 1, the next 3 will be close to 0, the fifth one will be close to 1 again, and then the next 3 will be close to 0, and then the last one will be close to 1. Now that is if you're physically close to alignment. You may find numbers that are a little bit further off than this because you moved the position of the scope to center the star. It was like a few degrees probably away from where the star was, so these numbers will be larger. But these are the kind of numbers you can expect once it's aligned. So you can leave that up or remove it once you're done looking at that. So you can go back to settings, preferences, and then turn off the show alignment data, and then refresh the display. So now you're ready to point to an object you've been aligned to the sky. So now it should accurately point to the sky. One of the other things that I didn't talk about is when you slew to an object. So let's go ahead and select an object to slew to. So I'm going to select one of the Messier objects. Let's go to M31. We'll slew to that object. So it should place it in the center, or close to the center of the eyepiece once you've aligned it. So now it's close to the eyepiece, center of the eyepiece. The OTA data matches the target data. And then what you're going to do, or what you will notice, is that this mode indicator is right here. We slewed to the object, and what it does, it goes automatically into point mode. And what point mode does is it dynamically calculates the position every 5 seconds. It tracks based on trying to point continuously to the calculated position of the object, and it based on the alignment data. So it knows where the object should be, and it continually points to that. The resulting behavior is that the tracking rate is dynamic in both the deck and the RA. That means that the rate is going to be changing over time. It's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be a fixed right ascension tracking rate. It's going to be dynamic, and then the declination is actually going to track, as opposed to just being fixed over time. So you'll see these numbers change in the OT data because of that. Now, if you go to a manual mode, let's say you want to center up something, or you go to manual mode by hitting one of these buttons, the up, down, left, right, or you move the joystick, it will go to the tracking mode. And let me do that right now. I'm just going to bump it up. You can see it immediately that the indicator goes to track mode. What that means is that right now it's still tracking, but it's at a fixed rate on the RA, and the deck is not going to move from where it's at. So one thing you can look at under settings is the calculated tracking rate. This is based on the nominal sidereal rate. Now, there's a lookup table in the documentation that has the rates for sidereal for each mount, sidereal, lunar, and solar rate, and then you can also put any other rate you want in here. And the documentation, the programmer's reference manual, goes into this calculation for this value. And so if you have any other rate that you want to put in there, let's say you want to follow a comet or some other object that's not tracking at sidereal rate, you can put the value in there, calculate a new value, and put it in there. So that's what that's for. So that's the tracking. So as soon as you go to manual mode, it'll start tracking fixed rate. To go back into, let's say you've moved it some, you moved it up and to the right a little bit because that's centered your object like you wanted it in for your photograph. If you want to go back to point mode, which is helps keep the object centered where you put it, what you need to do is go to app bar, coordinate input, and then what you'll do is you'll read the coordinates off the OTA data, because that's where you're pointing at right now. That's where you want it to be, and you want it to go to point mode for that object, for that location. So what you'll do is you type in the RA in the deck that's in the OTA data where you're pointing at right now. So you go 0, 42, 46, and 41, 1602, and you'll submit that, and then it'll go to point mode. And right now it's tracking in point mode right now. It's actually pointing dynamically in point mode, and so it'll keep that centered the way the coordinates that you entered once you've adjusted your mount manually and gone. So that's how you go back to point mode. Alright, so what else? Let's say you want to search for an object that's not in the list, that's not in the standard list of Messier objects or solar system objects. So what you can do is do a search, and since you downloaded all the items that are in the more advanced database of 70,000 objects, you should be able to search for an NGC object like 2093, I think, is a good number. So let's see what this looks like. And there it is. So let's see, you want to go there. And it'll come up, and it's in the database. There's no information on it, and it's not up in the sky because the search for the button doesn't come up. So let's look for another object. Let's search on, let's go search for, let's see, NGC 2151. Let's see if there's such a thing. So we'll click on that, and there is. There's NGC 2151. So we'll click on that, and again, that one's not up now, but you get the idea. You'll be able to search for an object, and if it's up above the horizon, the button will show up that will let you just select the object. So that's how you do a search for an object that you're looking for. And the other way is to know the object's coordinates, and like I showed before, you can do coordinate input with this button here, CO. So you select that, so you can put in any coordinate you want. So let's go ahead and put in a coordinate. Let's just make one up. Let's see. Let's go to 6 hours exactly, and we'll go to 10 degrees deck. Say that's where you want to go. So let's submit that, and it will slew there. So it'll show you the target data, and it's a user target, so because we entered it into the database, into the search tool, or into the go-to coordinate tool, and so it'll get there. As you can see, the deck is at 10 degrees exactly, and then the RA is close. It's 5 seconds off. It'll be within a couple of seconds typically, just depends. So there you have it. Now let's say you want to use, you have a specific altitude and azimuth you want to put the mount. You can also do that. So let's go to app bar, got a coordinate input. Let's say we want to put it at 45 degrees altitude, and we want to put it at east at 45 degrees, so we'll put 90 degrees. We'll see what this does. Now, it's important to watch the alt-az data in the OTA data instead of the RA deck, since we're entering coordinates in alt-az. That's where it should put it. So let's go ahead and submit alt-az. There's a different button for that. Let's go ahead and submit that, and let's just watch what it does. So it's moving right now. So we got an altitude of 45 degrees and an azimuth of 90 degrees, which is due east. So you can see it's slewing north. It's doing a pier flip basically, because it's going over the North Pole. It'll take a minute or two to get there because we're slewing all the way back across the sky. So it's getting closer. Got a few more degrees to go. You can see the altitude's coming down, the azimuth is going up towards 90, altitude's coming down to 45, and there it's very close. And there it is, 45 degrees altitude, azimuth 90 degrees. So that's how you would point it to a static object in on your in your sky if you have a specific point that you know. Like a long distance, during the day you want to point it at some object in the distance and you know the altitude and azimuth of it, then you can point it there. Or alternatively, you can actually measure the altitude and azimuth of a certain object by slewing to it manually and then reading the altitude and azimuth off the display. Now the other thing to note is that when you put to an altitude and azimuth point in the sky, it turned the tracking off, because you just wanted to look at that fixed point in space. So one thing you can do, let's see if this works. Let me go ahead and manually bump it, and that turned tracking on. But you notice it didn't really turn it on. It went to track mode. So one thing you're going to have to do to go back to point and track mode. Oh, it did enable it. It did that. See how it came back. And the RA is fixed now. And the deck is fixed, and now the alt and az are moving off of where we were. So when you hit a manual button, it goes to track mode. It will start tracking in the fixed track mode. All right. So I think we've covered just about everything. Let's go back to settings real quick and let me see if there's anything else I've skipped in here. One thing you'll notice is the IP address. This is the default IP address to connect to the SSID. Once you've connected the SSID, that's the IP address of the mount controller. These two items at the bottom, the motor current and the acceleration, are not user settable. And then the use JRH is another test diagnostic switch that we use for testing that you need to leave off. So I think that's it for the preferences. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We've gone over several things. We've talked about how to manually move the mount, how to select an object and go to the mount. We did a 3-star alignment. We looked at all the settings and preferences to see what they were. One thing I'll leave you with is if you look at the About box, this is our address, and this is actually our old address. The updated version that you should be able to download has our new address, which is 1010 South 48th Street, Springdale, Arkansas. So that's that, and I appreciate you sticking with me on this video. So that's it. Thank you.